Let's talk about Git. I would like to show how companies work in regards to collaboration. Right? So starting from today, you are going to create a team application. So we're trying to reproduce as far as possible the methodology and the flow that not every company, of course, but the majority of the companies follow in regards to Git. So I think first of all it's worth to mention that there are two types of approaches here. So approach number one is you're working for a company, so you belong to the product you're building, so you have direct access to all the details of the product, as you can imagine. Approach B is you're creating an open source, you want to collaborate with an open source framework or tool like React. So imagine that you found a bug on the React source code and you want to fix it. You can fix it. That's the good thing about GitHub, right? You can collaborate and you can participate and you can improve existing software, right? So most of the process is quite similar, but there are some differences. In one case, you are part of the core team, so you have access to all the details of that piece of software. Or the other case, you are not part of the core team, so the process to update the software you're collaborating with is a bit more complicated. Yes, a bit. Anyway, the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create the application on GitHub for your team. So we have a GitHub account for Codeiry. You can see that we still have here the free apps of the previous bootcamp members. Actually, one of them has been recently updated, as you can see, which is good. So first of all, I'm going to create the repo. So this will be the central place where your app will be, and then you'll have a copy of this app. You'll work with a copy, and then you'll integrate changes from your copy to the central piece of software, right? So first of all, let's create the app. I'm going to start with the alpha one, because this is alphabetically the first one, and we can do the rest offline. But the process is the same. So yes, everything will apply to your team. So this is the name of your app, right, Tom? Correct. So now let's create the project. And that's there, right? There's nothing on it yet, but hey, it's the same as Codeflix for now. We just created the project on GitHub, that's it. So the next thing I'm going to do is, I'm going to do the first commit. So I'll do the first commit, which is a skeleton of React, and then you can take it from there. So how do we do that? Well, I'm going to run, same as Codeflix, create React app, and then the name of the app. So that will hopefully create the classic Hello World app. Actually, what I can do now is I can go to Visual Studio Code and I can prepare it a bit. So, yep. So let's just open this one. Here you go. And as usual, let's just do npm start just to make sure everything works, all these things, right? The next thing we'll have to do is to set up the remote. Do you remember how to set up the remote? We have to tell our laptop where the repo is on the cloud. So to do that is, look, you got it here. Git remote add origin, blah, 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 blah. So you won't do that. You won't do that because you are not going to work with the upstream. So upstream is the main repo where the code is. You're not going to work with it. You're going to work with your copy. So you have to set up the details for your copy, not for the upstream. But I'll do that now because I do want exceptionally to do the first commit. Right. So let's see if it works. cd npm start, and then I'll get blah blah blah. Yes, please start the server. So eventually that will show the app. Let's prepare the terminal. Right, so I'm going to add the remote for the upstream. Oh, I copied twice. Yeah, that's it. Cool, so is the server running? Yes, it's running. Cool, right? So, I mean, nothing very exotic so far, right? So then, commit and push. As you already know, do you notice, maybe you notice, maybe not, that with the newest version of Create React app, if you remember when we did the setup, let me rephrase that, we had to do the commit with initial structure. Do you remember we got 14 files here on the left-hand side? Not anymore, because with the newest version of Create React app, as soon as you install it, it's doing the commit for us of the initial commit, right? So actually, if I type git log, you see, initial commit from Create. I haven't done that. I haven't done any commit, so it has done that. It's done it for us, which is okay, I guess. So let's push the changes. Right, permission. Yeah, wait a minute. Oh yes, of course. Why? Why it doesn't work? Well, there is a good reason. So we've got 2 users. So I created the project as part of the Codely user, but I'm trying to compete using my personal account. I don't have access, right? It's a functional issue. GitHub won't allow us to do the commit. So in other words, we need, I'll do that actually. We need to add collaborators. So I'm going to add myself, and I'm going to add Tom, for example, as an example. Yep. So then we'll receive an email and blah, 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 right? Cool. So now, because we have been granted access to the repo, hopefully we can push again. That looks much better, right? So hopefully now, back to the upstream project, exactly. So the alpha team repo is set up. But as I said, you are not going to commit directly to this upstream repo. We are not going to do that. Why? Because we want to create professional software. Professional software means we need to go through a review process before updating the master or the upstream repo, right? So how are we going to do it? I mean, yeah, there are 2 alternatives, and this is where I wanted to talk about them, and then we can decide which one to follow. So the easiest approach is literally to add you as a collaborator of the repo, like I did with Tom. So Tom, he can now do git clone, then do a change, commit and push. We can do that. And this will be probably the way it will work once you join a company, right? So you just belong to a team, commit, push, and everything works fine, right? Of course, we can still create branches, do pull requests, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to make it more complicated on purpose. So instead of granting you access, I'll grant you access anyway. I grant you access and I'll explain why. But the way I would like to work is with a fork. I would like you to fork this repo. The main reason is, if you fork the repo, you own it. You have a copy of the repo. So if I'm an employer and I go to your profile, I will immediately see that you have forked the repo and you are working with it. So then your GitHub profile will look better. Because first of all, you have a new project in your portfolio. And secondly, because you created a fork. So you know how a fork works. That's very important. It's very important, right? So I'm going to make it a bit more complicated than usual, just for for the reasons that I just explained, right? Also, if tomorrow you want to collaborate with any open source tool, which you should do at some point, that will be literally what we're going to do now, right? So then you learn, as a side effect, how to collaborate with public repos on GitHub. So how are we going to do that? Because now I'm a collaborator of this repo, so if I go to my GitHub with my user, right? If I go to repos, I don't have any, visually speaking, no one will see that I'm a collaborator of the alpha team, right? So to fix that, what I'm going to do, and that's the way you collaborate with any piece of software on GitHub, so this is why this is important. I'm sure you've seen this button hundreds of times, but probably you've never clicked on it. So this is the Codery one, so this is the central upstream. So I'm going to click in fork. You see fork? When you click on the fork button, it will copy the project to your personal GitHub account. I click fork, it may take a few seconds, and then eventually, look, you see, this is my user, this is team app, and then fork from blah, 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 right? So that means that if I go now to my repos again, I got it there, right? Right, and then the question is, first of all, how do I work with a repo? Well, the first part is simple. A repo is just a forked repo is just a repo. So you can do the same thing you do with Codeflix, for example, or with any other project you've created. So the first thing, the repo is already there. So the first thing we have to do is to clone it. How to clone it? Easy. We just click on clone or download, we copy SSH. Do you remember the differences between SSH and HTTPS? Correct. If you use HTTPS, every time you commit and push, you have to authenticate, which is a bit meh. With SSH, because we created an SSH key, this is sorted automatically. So we copy that, and then now I'm not coding anymore. Now this is just me, right? As a personal user. So because this is just me, I'm going now to clone it in my home directory. So git clone. You see that I'm cloning. I'm not cloning. So forget about Codery master branch for now. Forget about it. Just think about your personal project. This is my personal project, right? Because this is my username. So let's clone it. Easy, right? So then that has created a new folder with some files on it. And now I would like to do some changes, right? Because we want to collaborate in our team application. So Visual Studio, and then let's open it. Right, so that's interesting. Yeah, I think I saved it in the wrong folder. Oh, brilliant. I saved it inside of the other one. That's horrible, right? But that's fine. So this is the upstream, and inside of the upstream, I created the project again. That may happen to you, but hopefully not. So because the project is self-contained, I can just move it somewhere else, right? So I can do move. Sorry, let's go one level above. Right, so you see, we got the upstream, and then we got the project, our personal project inside of the upstream, which is bad. So let's just move it to a couple of levels up. So now, hopefully, I'll have the project. Yeah, here you go. Right, we got it. Okay, cool. And actually, I'm going to move it one level up. Now, okay, let's leave it there. Let's leave it there. So here you go. That's it. So now this is my personal project, and we can do stuff with it, right? So we can do just a change. So let's just start the server again. Is it the other one running? I don't know, so let's try to start the server. Correct, npm start. Oh, right, because we didn't run, so probably we have to do npm install, right? So we've checked out the project from GitHub, but we have to install everything first, right? Remember to do that. So that's fine. Let's run npm install. It will download React and all the dependencies. And hopefully, once everything is installed, we can do the npm start. So remember, just to recap.
What did you do? React script start?
No, npm install. Yeah, because we've checked out a new project from the cloud, so we have to install the dependencies. So hopefully, once the dependencies are installed, then we can run npm start. You see? And now, because we have already installed React and everything, we can start the server. So now, hopefully, this is still the old one. This is still loading, you see? But eventually, it will start up our personal, fork. You see? This is our personal fork. Because it's our personal fork, we can edit it, right? So this, I'm going to commit that to the alpha team. So I'm going to just change the title. Welcome to the alpha team app. You'll change it afterwards, right? So yes, change the title, it works, fine. So let's start collaborating. Because I'm a collaborator of the alpha team application, the first thing is commit and push. That's the first thing. So we want to commit to our personal repo. You know already how to do commit and push, so update title to welcome users. We do commit, and then we do push. It's working. Yeah, that should be it. So what that means, I would like to open side by side my fork and the upstream to spot the differences. So in the upstream, we got one commit, which is the one that React did for us. How many commits do we have now in our personal Fit Your Goal application? 2. We got one, but if we refresh, we got 2. Correct. Now, we are ahead of upstream because we have added some content. So what's next? Wrong, not merge. No, wrong. This is what we want to avoid. We don't want to merge things. We want to get things reviewed. Pull request, correct. We have to do a pull request. So, how do we do the pull request? Well, you know that already. You know how to create a pull request from a branch. But we don't have any branch. We have a fork, which is it's like a branch, but it's bolder, right? Because it's a copy. So let's go to pull request, create a new pull request, and look, GitHub automatically detects what we want to do. Because we just have one branch, so definitely we don't want to do the pull request from our branches. But you see, look, the pull request will go from head, master, fork to the upstream, which makes sense, right? Because we want to look at the arrow. We want to put changes from here to there. So let's just create, and then at the bottom it's telling you the diff, right? So this is telling you, hey, if you create a pull request, this will be the content of the pull request, which makes sense, one commit. So we create it as usual, blah, blah, blah. Now lots of emails and all these things. So now the pull request is created without any issue, fortunately. Because the pull request is created, now we go to the second part. Someone in our team has to review the changes, right?
So this email will go to everyone in the team?
This email, well, that's a good question, because I didn't set any reviewer. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure if your team will be notified. I'll have to check the settings. Maybe we can customize that, right? I mean, in worst case, once you create the pull request, send a message to your team on Slack, hey, I created the pull request. Will you please have a look, right? Because I already know that I created a pull request, so I'm now switching roles. So now I will be Codiri, which could be Tom perfectly, right? So the only thing I'm going to do that here is because I want you to see how to do it. But yeah, anyone in your team could do that. So if I refresh the page as Codiri, oh look, we got a new pull request. Someone wants to collaborate with this repo. Amazing. Let's have a look at the changes. So we click on it, update the title and welcome users. Okay. Let's review that. So eventually, as Victor said, we will go to merge. But before merging, let's review the changes, right? And this is what I don't really like because.
Sorry, Ricardo. So when you're on this Codiri
Yep.
page,
Yep.
would that be anybody on the team?
Yep.
You could just go.
Yep.
So, right.
Yep. Anybody on the team will have access to that view, right? Because of that, if I'm Tom, imagine that I'm Tom now, so I can review that commit. I recommend you can click on the commit title, and then you can review the changes. I personally suggest you, because if you have one commit, that's fine, but we can have more than one commit, right? You've done that already. So if you go to Files Change, the last tab, then we get the list of changes, so then we can just click Review Changes. I just prefer it. So easy, right? So I'm Tom, and I see that Ricardo has changed the title, fair enough. So looking good. So I'll approve it. Obviously, if you request changes, well, you know the flow will be exactly the same thing. You'll have to go back to local, do the changes, commit and push. It's the same. Submit review, approved. And now, that's important because we've approved the changes. Who's merging? The requester or the reviewer? I think there is no perfect answer here. It depends. If you are working for a company, could be both, could be either. Right? Could be either. Some companies, once the reviewer approves the changes, just for simplicity reasons, he just merges the changes. In other companies, the reviewer doesn't merge the changes. He asks the requester to merge them, because if something goes wrong, it's like, I didn't press the button. No. That depends, right? But definitely, if you are collaborating with an open source project, you won't even have access to that merge. It doesn't make sense, right? So I'm going to change the code of React and I'm going to merge the changes? No, that doesn't work. So the owners of the software will have to do it. In this particular case, I'm going to ask the reviewer to merge the changes. And the reason is, if the reviewer merges the changes, it will be then easier to track in history who is reviewing what. You'll see in a minute. So I am now the reviewer, right? I'm Codiri, I'm the reviewer. So I'm going to review them. Do you remember which one should we select?
Squash.
Squash. Why squash, Tom? Ah, sorry, you were going to bite your sandwich.
I don't remember why. It was there last time.
Anyone? Why squash? So if we, yeah, again? Correct, that's it. The default option, create a new merge commit, that means if you've done 4 commits in your pull request, these 4 commits will be added on top of the stack. But if you squash the changes, that means that it will squash all the commits into a single commit. Why this is useful? Because from the upstream point of view, it's easier to see the progress if we have 1 commit per pull request. And also, if we did the pull request, we merged things and we realized that was a horrible idea, if we have 1 commit, it's way easier to revert. If we have 10 commits, it could be a bit more complicated. So for simplicity reasons, every time you merge into either master branch, if you are working with branches, or the upstream, if you are working with forks, squash and merge. Let's do it. blah, 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 right? Because this is going to be squashed in a single commit. We can still enter some details about, okay, the title of the commit, that generally speaking should reflect the title of the issue you are working on, including the issue number, ideally. So, now it's merged. Because now it's merged, how many commits do we have on the upstream? 2. Correct. And actually, look what happened if I click on commits. This is why I mentioned it was important to delegate into the reviewer to merge the changes, because then we can see the interaction. We can see who requested the changes and who approved them. Why this is important? Because if in the long term I see things like that, that was the first one, right? But that shouldn't happen again. That person didn't go through the flow. Like, hey, why are you merging things into the upstream without any review? Wrong. So that was the easy part, and now the complex part. It's not complex. It's not complex technically speaking. It's complex in terms of attitude. If you're an organized person, that will go fine. If you're a not organized person, you'll struggle massively with this step. This is as simple as now synchronizing our fork. So what happened? So we got, first of all, the upstream with some changes. Then we created the fork, so they were in sync. Then we added changes on the fork, and then we merged them into master, into the upstream. But now, even though the code is the same, technically speaking, we have to tell our fork that there are some changes into the upstream. And that's the important thing. And that's the step that if you forget to do this step often, you have massive, massive, massive issues. So this is super important to do that very often. So what that command is, I think I sent you on a Slack. Right. So, because this is the problem. Right? Look how many votes this question has, because this is super important. I think this answer is pretty accurate. That's why I like it, to put this as a reference. So the first thing to do, because we want to update our code from the upstream. So the first thing we have to do is to add the upstream remote, because we want to pull code. We don't want to push, because to push code to the upstream, we'll have to do a pull request. But definitely we want to pull, because it's not, I'm working alone, but if tomorrow Tom adds any change to the upstream, I want to update my local fork to stay in sync, right? This is pretty obvious. So the first thing, let's add the remote of the upstream. So for that particular case, and you will all have to do that, so you need to click on clone or download, and then again, copy the Git thingy. So you copy that, and then you go back to let me have a look. Yeah, here you go. So you go back to the terminal, so you add another remote. So how many remotes do we have at the moment? 1, correct, which is the fork, right? This is my personal one, but now I want to have another one. So git remote add, yep, you see, git remote add, so we are adding, sorry, I forgot something. Yeah, so usually we do git remote add origin, because origin is our repo, but this is the upstream, so we can do that. Git remote add upstream, so that will be the name of where the master, the central repo is, and then the name of the repo. So the URL for the repo. Right.
So upstream would be the name of the...
Yeah, you can put whatever name you want, but the standard is upstream. Upstream is the central repo, the one which is at Codeiry.
Okay.
Right? So now if you see, now we have 2 remotes. The origin, which is the local, not the local, the personal one, and then the upstream, which is the central one, right? So this is the important thing. Every time, every day, twice a day, 3 times a day, you need to do these steps. Because if you don't do these steps, well, you know the problem what will be. That Tom will do some changes, because I'm not pulling his changes, I'll do another change. Maybe we'll change app.js at the same time. And you know what will happen if we change the same line of the same file at the same time? Conflict, wrong, right? And solving conflicts is complicated. It's complicated.
By doing these steps, you mean these steps?
No, the ones I'm going to do now,
Okay.
right? So
So
I have.
you do this once.
Yeah, this is once.
Yeah.
So we do that, correct, we do that once. We just set up where the upstream is. And then the next, I think, 3 commands is that you need to type them all the time. So even if you are working alone, so this is not just because Tom is going to commit something. Even if I commit something, I push it to the upstream, I still need to fetch, to pull these changes. So let's just copy these 3 commands. First of all, git fetch upstream. So this is just to refresh the information about the upstream. If there is any new branch, if there is any new information, so we'll locally be aware of changes. But this is not about code there. The second one is a bit unnecessary, but it's safe, because if we're working with branches, there's a way to remember, hey, please go back to master. We're already in master, right? So if I type git branch, it should display master. But hey, okay, let's do it. I'll read it master, okay, fine. And then the last 2 are very important. So this one, this is to pull changes from the upstream. So this is the command that will download changes from the upstream. In that case, in reality, our branches were in sync, right? Because what I had in local is the same as what I had in the upstream. But as I said, do that, because in the future others will collaborate with you, and you'll have to do it. And the last one is to say, okay, I potentially updated my personal repo locally, so please send the changes to the cloud, to my local cloud. Look, git push means send the changes to the cloud. -F stands for force. It's a bit more aggressive way to commit changes. So force makes sense because, for example, in this case, we haven't updated any single line of code, right? But still, there is some metadata underneath. That's why the force says, even if there is no changes on the code, just push anything, right? And then origin, because we want to upload the changes to our personal repo, and then master, which is the only branch we have. Look, working, done. So what that means? Now, if we refresh our personal repo, which is not this one, yeah, so let me go back to my repos, and then, yep. So, yeah, in reality, yep, so we don't really have any change, but hopefully now we can continue with the flow, right? We don't have any change because the code was the same, right? The code was the same. But hopefully now, just to prove the theory, if I add some exclamation marks, right? So add add some exclamation marks to the title, commit, push, working, that's it. So how many commits do we have now in the upstream? 2, correct. So in other words, 2 because we merged before, right? So this hasn't been affected by our exclamation mark change yet. And how many changes we got in our personal repo? 3, correct. That's it. You see? So it's the same process again and again. Because I have a new commit, I can do a pull request, someone can review it, then it'll merge it, and then again, the most important step is to continue doing git, all these steps, right? So git fetch upstream, git checkout master, git rebase, and git push. So your productivity on the next 3 weeks will mostly depend on your ability to remember to run these 3 commands all the time. All the time. Is there any question?
So on that Agile flow,
Yep.
before the push,
Before the push, yeah?
it's giving you an alternative where it says git merge upstream master.
Yeah.
When will you use that instead of rebase?
For now, I don't want to make it more complicated, so just do the rebase. Yeah, we'll explain the differences between merge and rebase, but let's leave it there. I mean, it will work fine with merge most of the time, but let's use rebase.
So we run these commands after the pull request has been approved.
Yes, so you need to run these commands. I mean, if you hear someone in your team saying, can anyone review my pull request, and you or anyone else review them and merge them, every time anyone merge anything into the upstream, then you should quickly go and type them before you continue, adding changes that may have conflicts with whatever was just merged into the upstream.
I have a question about pull request.
Mhm.
Is it only one person?
That's a good question. Not really. We could have multiple reviewers. We could have multiple reviewers, but in reality, I think it's okay to have just one.
We don't need to make branches there. So we fork it, so and then we need to branch on that fork.
So to me, that's a good question. Technically speaking, it's not necessary. To me, there is a good reason to still create branches into your personal repo. Why? Imagine that you want to experiment with a feature and it's just like a playground. You're not sure if this will work or not. So it may be a good idea to create a branch. So for example, if you don't like the idea, you can just delete the branch, right? You're not affecting your commits. Otherwise, you'll have to notice that this is not correct before you commit, or if you commit, you have to revert the changes manually. So every time you create a branch, it's like for safety reasons, right? But apart from that, generally speaking, you can work with master most of the time. Any other question? No? Cool. That was it, guys. Thank you.